Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Bart from multirotorforums.com. We're here doing drone radio live. This is episode number 3. Today is November 18th, and we've got a full show planned for you tonight. Our special guest tonight is going to be Jim Bowers. He runs the website sardrones.org. It's a worldwide search and rescue volunteer network that provides on-demand services via their network of volunteers. All 50 states are represented, as well as 40 plus countries around the world. We're also going to be talking to Freefly Systems ALTA owner number 1. He took the first delivery of his Freefly ALTA not too long ago, and he's going to be talking with us, letting us know how that experience has been going for him. We have Scott Norton in the studio. We're going to kick around a little bit about FPV racing. We have Scott Hess calling in later on at the end of the show, and we're going to be doing SUAS news again as we did before, although instead of having Patrick Egan joining us tonight, he's on vacation. We're going to be speaking with one of his partners, Gene Robinson. So just to get started, again, this is episode number 3. We don't have any questions tonight. Hopefully near the end we're going to have viewer calls, and you guys will provide the questions. I was going to do a new feature tonight called "What the F Did I Order from China?" just to address the fact that we order a lot of things in the mail, from the internet, and it doesn't arrive for 6 or 8 weeks until after the order was placed. And I was expecting something, I think it was an OS32 flight control system from Banggood.com. It's an ACE32 knockoff with the OSD built in. But you order this stuff in the mail, you forget you even ordered it, and then it eventually arrives and you open the packaging and you're like, what the F did I order from China? So since we don't have that package, it's not here yet, we're going to do a quick review. It's not really a product review, but Scott brought this with him. It's a ready-to-fly 250 size FPV quad by Wakera, and this was sent to us to do a product review from gearbest.com. And Scott had it for a long time. They shipped it with a European spec video transmitter. So he hasn't been able to use it. We just recently got the right parts. He's installed them. He's going to be doing a review. But you could see this up close and in person. It's pretty nice. Comes all ready to fly. Uses a Wakera flight control system. This one in particular is set up for 3S batteries. It has a lot of different options available when you order it. So like I said, the way Scott got this one was pre-configured. The motors are, it's a little bit more, it's not geared towards a 250 spec, which would have the 1806 motors. These are actually 2814 with 2500 kV, and it's a nice build. There's no soldering. Everything all the way down to the ESCs snaps or plugs into place. It has lights, it has a camera. The camera tilts only about 20 degrees. So that'll get you started. It comes with a video transmitter incorporated into it. But again, it's Wakera's flight control system. So we haven't flown it yet. We'll report at the website, possibly at a future show once we get started. Comes with a transmitter. It's called a Runner 250. Scott's just telling me from the side. It's the Runner 250. This is the transmitter it comes with. And this is the box. And this isn't really a product review. This is just an impromptu thing we're doing, because my what the F came from China was not available. All right, so that's that. We're going to move on and get the news started. Gene Robinson is also an aerial operator, and he does a podcast with Patrick Egan from SUAS News. So Patrick may have established a new standard for people who make a living in the drone industry. He's on vacation. I think he's the first guy I've ever heard of that took a vacation who's also full-time in drones. So Gene is talking with us, not picking up.
Nope, it's ringing.
Okay, well, it's ringing. I'll tell you what we're going to talk about, though. Oh, he's picking up. Good. As you probably know, the big news this week, which we could talk about all night without talking about it at all. Registration requirements being put forth by the FAA here in the United States. Anybody who knows anything is mum. Nobody's saying anything. I've been beating the bushes trying to get information, especially from the guys at the AMA who were with us on the last episode. Apparently, we're not close enough yet for them to divulge secrets. So we don't have any concrete information. That announcement from the FAA is supposed to come out on the 20th, which is Thursday, and hopefully the impact on all of us as a community is going to be minimal. But the FAA is supposed to publish that on the 20th. Is he picking up, Bruce?
Yeah, I haven't been able to check it, but he should be on here. So stand by and we'll bring him up.
Yeah. So the stories we're talking about tonight, there's three actually we're going to discuss.
I'm going to open his mic.
Sure. Here comes Gene right now.
Should be there. He's hot.
Just switch over to him so we could. How's his video look?
There's no video.
Okay. Well, that's him holding a wing. That's what he does. Gene, can you hear me? Hey, Gene.
Hello, Bart.
There you are.
You got him.
Very good. So we've got your picture up on the screen. Do you have a video camera you could turn on?
Well, I'm afraid if I turned it on, you might lose my audio. So.
I got you. You had said there were some floods in your area. They knocked out the internet, so you're kind of on limited. You're on a limited internet stream right now.
Well, we haven't gotten completely back up to speed yet.
Right.
Let's see. I get my smiling face in there. We'll try it and see
Sure.
how that works. But yeah, we've had a little bit of a problem with getting our internet back up and running.
There you are.
Capacity.
Very good. Nice to meet you finally.
Nice to meet you.
So I sent you a list after looking at the website this week, and the last few days. The big stories, I think, you may or may not agree. Patrick Egan being the first career drone person to actually take a vacation. I think he's setting a standard the rest of us could all work towards.
I still don't know how he rated that because I haven't gotten vacation yet either. And as you know, I've been co-hosting the SUAS News podcast with him from the very beginning. And,
Right.
So I must be next.
Right.
The holidays are coming up, and that's what I'm going to hope for.
That's going to be our 2016 New Year's resolution. Drone career people who also have vacation. But anyway, so the big stories, the big one coming out of the FAA prior to the registration announcement being that, I don't know what made the FAA think to do this, but they said you're going to be approached by people trying to get you to use them to facilitate your registrations. Don't be fooled, it won't be necessary.
Well, Bart, we've had a bunch of people jump out there with the 333 process and try to monetize it, if you will.
Right.
And there are a lot of folks out there that are doing that very thing with that process. The FAA is just letting everybody know that, hey, you don't have to get a lawyer to get your registration done. And actually, you can reserve an N number right now for your aircraft very easily. It only costs you $10.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it online. And, after you get to the point where you're going to put it on an aircraft, and there's another process that you have to go through to provide them with some serial numbers and some basic identification stuff so they know that you're putting it on what type of aircraft. And you put the N number on there, you're done. So it's not as intimidating as a lot of people would like to believe it is.
Right.
The real issue is that there's going to be so many of us out there, they don't really know how they're going to deal with the volume. That's the big thing.
Right. Plus the fact that the registration system only deals with 5-digit, up to 5-character registration numbers, which gives you a finite pool of available numbers, even with the alphabet and the numbers mixed in. And when you're talking about, potentially 1 million aircraft being delivered through the holidays alone, it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with at the very least. I'm not even going to bother guessing what they may or may not try to do with it. My personal opinion is they should register the pilots and not the aircraft, but you'll see. A couple days they'll probably announce a delay. That would be the only consistent thing they've done through all of this is announce another delay, and we can all go on operating for another 6 months or a year. But I'm not laughing at the FAA in case they're watching and they mistook my tone of voice as mocking. That's not what I was doing. I was totally respectful. But anyway, so we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. And like you said, people who do experimental aircraft have been reserving N numbers for decades. It's simple to do. If the number's available, there's no hoops to jump through. But yeah, any mumblings on your end? Have you heard any? I know you guys always have your ear to the wind. Have you heard anything in the way of indications which way this might go? A lot of people ask. I get emails about this actually now from time to time.
Yeah, we've heard a few things, and quite honestly, it's obviously going to have to be an online system,
Right.
and they may be pre-assigned numbers, and it may be similar to like an IP address that they assign you. There's been some rumblings about doing it dynamically, where you could do it per flight, even, which is really kind of way out there.
Wow.
But as long as they have some basic identification information, and the only flaw in your plan to register pilots there, Bart,
Yeah.
is the pilot isn't always there when that aircraft goes down in somebody's neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, there's a little bit of a problem with that, but
Right.
It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with the volume, because we've seen the number of 333 applications that have gone in, and they've ended up contracting out a lot of that. So we're going to have to see what happens with the registration part of it, and whether it is sent out to a contractor or handled within the agency.
Right.
I'm betting it's going to be a contractor.
Right. The next story kind of ties into this. Some of the players in the business, some of the players who have representation in these talks, and they have advocacy groups out there working on their behalf. DJI, no surprise, is in the mix. They've introduced a new geofencing software app, which is going to update helicopter equipment in real time per flight using a database that is going to be actively updated as well to help prevent unmanned aircraft from entering restricted airspace, airport areas, stuff like that. Have you been following that one?
That is correct. And, one of the things that a lot of DJI pilots are starting to look at is how much information that you are sending to them and how much they have access to when you do go in the air. I mean, it's significant to begin with.
Right.
And if, say, for example, you were involved in an infraction of some sort, could that information be used against you in a court of law? I mean, there's so many different wild ways it could be used, and we have to be aware of the information that they are receiving, they are requesting per flight, and that they do get if you decide to sync with the web.
Right.
It's significant.
Right.
So it's something that everybody needs to think about, and they need to weigh in on. Quite frankly, they need to pay attention to it and let their voice be heard.
Right. Right. What's interesting with the DJI approach now is that they're introducing an app that will run concurrent with your flight control system. And before the flight, if there's a new NOTAM, that's a notice to airmen that would be published by the FAA. If there's a new NOTAM that has a restriction on some airspace and you just happen to be near it or in it, all of a sudden now your helicopter is going to update, your flight control system is going to have these barriers to operation, and unless you've pre-established your account with DJI, you won't be able to remove those restrictions. Now, even some of the restrictions, like Washington, D.C., this is the way I understood it from reading the press release at SUAS News, or the article that you guys published. It's interesting that depending on your level of credentials that you've established with DJI, you'll be able to remove some of these restrictions. And presumably that means you're taking responsibility, which is a big, big element of whatever the FAA does, whether or not you take responsibility for the decisions you're making. But then even some of the restrictions, which are the highest order ones, you won't be able to remove those, like flying in and around Washington, D.C. in the United States, for example. It's interesting how DJI just keeps injecting these elements that further refine how it is you can use your equipment, while at the same time adding to the complexity of, is it safe, is it right, as an operator, is it responsible, irresponsible? It's interesting how it just keeps evolving technically.
And that's why I think it's important for everyone to be aware of those developments and to weigh in on them and make their
Right.
comments known, because this is a very important issue. It's down to the point where you have a manufacturer that could potentially determine whether you can fly, and regardless of the situation, whether it's a exigent situation where you have an emergency,
Right.
like for instance, we do a lot of search and rescue.
Right.
And we may be the ones that are calling for the TFR. And if that's the case, then DJI has just cut themselves out of the search and rescue industry or the first responder industry, because you need to be able to bypass that, which adds another level of
Yeah.
complexity.
Well, that's interesting.
But,
Gene, can I interrupt you real quick? You look familiar. Were you the one that did the lawsuit for the search and rescue operation in Texas?
as a matter of fact, I was.
You were. That's
that
why you look
had been-
familiar. I've seen different reports about that. You fought that and you won, right?
Well,
Not
yeah,
to sidetrack
it
the
was,
conversation.
actually dismissed on a technicality, but it was a win in the fact that the FAA did pay attention to the fact that someone like myself could come in and affect some change. Now, one of the things that did come out of that was the dreaded ramp check for pilots.
Oh,
That
God.
process was changed.
Right.
So I call that a win, because I used to be scared to death of a ramp check myself.
Right. You'd be a
But
great
yeah,
guest on this
that
radio
was
show.
just-
You'd be a great guest for this radio show that I run. We could talk all about that for 20 minutes or so.
Easily.
Right. Okay. Well, the third story goes back to the equipment side of this. We're talking about regulations. We're talking about software. The equipment side of it, there's an operator. I had it written down. I don't have it in front of me. What's the name of the company? The Hymax. They have a 2.5-hour endurance quadcopter. Uses a mix of a gas engine and
Yes.
electric.
Let me tell you, there are probably, just like laptops and cell phones drove the battery industry back in the 80s,
Right.
you're going to see propulsion systems that are going to be just absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
The gas electric hybrid is one that uses a smaller engine but generates a lot of electricity, so
Right.
you can go further.
Right. It's running
2.5
instead of have
hours
just to kind of let me interrupt you real quick. Just so everybody knows what we're talking about. It's a hybrid which uses a big fuel tank, a small gas engine, turns a generator to make the electricity, so the motors, the flight control systems, all running on electricity, just like our standard quads and hexacopters and oxycopters. But instead of having batteries powering it all with a limited life, it's taking advantage of the fact that a small, efficient glow engine or gas engine could actually have a long endurance with the fuel that it can carry. So it's a hybrid. It uses gas power to generate electricity, and then that powers the helicopter. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure people viewing that might be new to all this could follow along.
Sure, I understand. And, it's just kind of one of the basic laws of physics that you get more energy out of a couple of ounces of gasoline than you do out of a couple of ounces of electrons in a battery.
Right.
And that's really the premise behind it. I think that along with that, that's going to push the solar industry. We'll start seeing more efficient solar cells,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll also start seeing fuel cells.
Mm-hmm.
There's already been some aircraft that have flown with some pretty good sized fuel cells and have
Right.
stayed up for a very long period of time. But
Right.
this gas electric hybrid is going to be something that will be available to us guys out here in the real world pretty quickly.
Yeah, the only downside after watching the video that you have posted with the news report is that the beautiful thing about the helicopters we've been flying is that they're quiet because they're electric. And
Right.
you introduce a gas engine, even with the tune pipe that they have on that one, it makes a lot of noise. And when you're flying, especially loitering, you can't do that at a football game. You can't do it and be stealthy in a military environment. So it'll have some applications. It's a neat demonstrator, but it's not going to be as universally accepted as straight electric, or even, like you said, the hydrogen fuel cell is a silent system that just has, prop noise like every other helicopter running on batteries.
Well, what we expect to see out of the hybrid system is like a super capacitor or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
where the engine can switch off,
Mm-hmm.
and you could go into stealth mode if you would like to look at it that way.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it would run off of the capacitor for several minutes before the motor would have to kick back in, supply the juice, recharge the capacitor, and then you could go again. So, there are solutions to those problems that are being worked on, and I think we're going to be seeing some exciting times in propulsion.
Okay. Well, very good. Is there anything else, any other stories that are tweaking the news waves right now that you wanted to discuss that I didn't request?
Well, no, the big thing is going to be the registration, and people
Right.
shouldn't be afraid of that.
Right.
We've all I think we've come to the conclusion that there does need to be some rules,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a part of the process. And if we're not involved, if we don't make our voice be heard, then we will get the rules that they think we need.
Right.
So make your voice heard. Make sure you keep up with what the developments are in each one of these things.
Right. Well, very good. Thank you very much, Gene. I appreciate you coming on the show with us, especially on short notice the way it was this past week. And we'll get even with Patrick next week for having the nerve to take vacation. And
I'll have some discussions with him myself.
all right. Well, thank you very much, Gene. Have a good night, and good luck getting that internet back up to full capacity at the house.
Thank you. I hope it went well on your end.
It was perfect. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Okay, so that was the news with Gene. Thank you very much again to Gene for coming on the show. It's great that people have chosen to participate in this show with us. We're trying to bring you the most up-to-date and complete information that we can from the whole entire world of multi-rotor helicopters. And next up, we're going to speak with Steve Maller. And Steve's company is Maller Photography out in San Francisco Bay Area. Steve's another one that's made a career in media work. He does photography and video, mostly for corporate clients. Today he was on site at Facebook headquarters doing, he does a lot of documentation for purpose of recording what's happening around the studio, around the headquarters and stuff like that. Can we feed Steve in? Can we get the conversation with him on screen, Bruce? There he is. Nice to see you again. We spoke earlier today. Nice to see you again, Steve. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before we get started, let me just give everybody the backstory real quick that we discussed earlier. Steve's 15 years pro photographer and videographer. His business is in and around the Bay Area. He got started, the thing that I always wonder when I meet new people and when we get to know each other a little bit, I always wonder what the story is, what the path was that brought them to be in a conversation with me at any given time. And that was my question for Steve. How did you happen to go from being a successful photographer out in the Bay Area to being on the phone with me this afternoon while we're both in our pajamas and stuff starting our day? So that's always the big mystery for me. Steve got into it because, go ahead, Steve.
I was out for a walk with my wife near where I live in Half Moon Bay, California, and I saw a small film crew down on the beach doing something, and I was naturally drawn to them, wanted to see what they were doing, and saw this amazing machine flying down the beach. And my jaw dropped.
Right.
And it was an octocopter. It was carrying a 5D Mark II.
Wow.
And I made a complete nuisance out of myself over the next half hour and peppered everybody with questions about what in the world what am I looking at here. Small independent film, actually was financed on Kickstarter, and they had a guy there who was doing some establishing shots and tracking shots down the beach. And I absolutely fell in love with it. This was 3.5 years ago. I didn't know an RC from anything. I'd never flown anything.
Right.
And but I do have a background in technology. I was a software engineer for 20 years.
Right.
Completely drawn to interesting new technological solutions to things. And that's how I got started. Just immediately dove into the rabbit hole on YouTube and everywhere else and learned everything there was to learn. Owned my first quadcopter after a few weeks, and here we are.
And so you got into it, as the way I understood it when we spoke this morning was, you're a photographer, you're a career photographer at this point. You do video work also, right? You do video productions?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And so the investigative process, curiosity took over. You started doing this stuff. And like the rest of us, it got more and more serious with more and more capable equipment until one day you heard that Freefly Systems, who makes the Movi that you use, you found out their hexacopter was just about ready and you were going up to Vegas to see them release it at, was it NAB?
Yeah, it was NAB this past April.
Right.
I have a background, spent a lot of time on multi-rotor forums and other online forums,
Sure.
and built several of my own machines, little
Right.
250 racer, big long distance quad, custom X8 octocopter to fly my Movi.
Right.
But I'm really interested at some point in truly operating commercially, and I really wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for that when the
Right.
regulatory stuff opens up, hopefully soon.
Right.
And one of the things for me is that while I'm a pretty good engineer, I don't trust my own skills to the point where
Sure.
I would want to have paying customers who were, paying me for something that I had built in my garage. So got on a plane to go to NAB.
Right.
Knew that the Freefly ALTA was coming. Was sort of tapping away on my iPhone, watching the Twitter feed, and all of a sudden up comes a tweet from Freefly that we've now announced the ALTA, here's the web page, and there's a pre-order page available. So I'm on Southwest Airlines flying from San Francisco to Las Vegas with my Wi-Fi that I paid all of $8 for. And I'm like, well, let me click on that link and see what happens. And sure enough, got to the page and went in my wallet, got my credit card out, and thought, well, I'm going to try this. And in the space of about 2 or 3 minutes, managed to actually place my pre-order on the plane on the way to Las Vegas, and got the confirmation and thought, wow, this is, we're living in the future here. And lo and behold, about 5 minutes later, I get an email from Tab and Denise at Freefly. Tab is the founder, Denise is the head of customer service, both of whom I've had many conversations with. And they said that everyone in the booth was cheering on the floor at NAB because they had their first pre-order and it was me.
Right.
And so it was super exciting. This is all before I even landed.
Were you on
the way to Las Vegas?
Were you on Freefly's radar at that point? Did they know you as a customer?
I'm pretty active on the Freefly forum. I had
Right.
the original Cinestar octocopter, and
Right.
obviously
Okay.
had spent quite a bit of time with the Movi.
Right.
And really, I have the handle, if you will, as the UAV grief counselor on the Freefly forum,
Right.
because I do have, from my technology background, a lot of forensics experience and
Right.
a lot of experience debugging problems and,
Right.
and looking through flight logs, and lots of people who crash came to me and others on the forum and multi-rotor forums as well and other
Right.
online forums to kind of help them figure out why things didn't work.
Right.
And so I kind of had a bit of an online presence, and of course, Freefly being a small company appreciated that there were people like me out there who were willing to help their customers and fellow users. So yeah, they knew who I was, and so it was that was the beginning of this next phase of our relationship.
So we know Freefly does great stuff. I've got a Movi sitting right here on the table with me, and they've released equipment that a lot of people have come to see as the gold standard in production. And so you were able to go to their headquarters. You were their first customer. You made the video. Tell us a little bit about the Golden Ticket program, how that came about.
Well, when I got to Las Vegas, I had been thinking about this for a while when I was on the airplane and getting to Las Vegas. And I mentioned to them, how would you guys feel about me actually buying a plane ticket and flying up to Seattle and picking up my ALTA when it was available? Because they told me I was first on the waiting list. So
Right.
why not? And they, they had a lot of things going on. Their booth was incredibly packed, and everyone wanted to see the ALTA and all the other things they had there. So they kind of brushed me off and whatever, and I sent a follow-up email, and they were very, very busy in the weeks following that. And then a couple months later, when it got close to the time to release the ALTA, I got an email from their customer service person, Denise, and copied Tab on it and said, we've been thinking about this, and we actually think we want you to come up if you're willing to do it.
Right.
And we'd be happy to host you and have a little get-together and give you a tour and present you with your ALTA. And we're wondering whether you wouldn't mind being filmed in the process. And I
Right.
thought, well, that's, that would be fun, and why not? So I went up there, I got a tour, and while I was on the tour, I told them, I said, I feel like Charlie Bucket. I feel like,
Right.
of course, we all know Willy Wonka
Right.
and all that, and I felt like I got to go to Wonka's chocolate factory. There were no Oompa Loompas, there were,
Right.
no chocolate rivers up there, but there were lots of wonderful, amazing people
Right.
and incredible tech, and they showed
Right.
me every prototype of the ALTA
Right.
leading up to the final production model. And I said I felt like I'd won the golden ticket, and lo and behold, they said, we really like that idea, and within weeks they had actually come up with this program for new ALTA buyers to be able to go up there and take delivery of their ALTAs and do test flights and get a tour, and it's been a very successful program. I know dozens of ALTA owners have taken advantage of it and flown in from all over the world. And I applaud them for that, because they're a tiny company. I mean, they're less than 100 people up there, and they're all enthusiasts. And I tell you, I don't know who was more excited about me showing up to pick up my ALTA, me or all the folks up there getting to see one of their babies end up in the hands of a real customer for the first time.
Right. Well, that's a big accomplishment. It's got their flight control system on it. Finally, the Synops that they had been talking about for a long time, and the Cinestar was getting a little long in the tooth. At this point, with everything that's been coming out from other manufacturers and stuff. So they must have been just ecstatic after, like you said, iterations of the prototype being built and flown. The Synops, the flight control system, we've seen what flight control systems can do to companies when they're trying to develop them and get them just right. So man, the long hours and the dedication and the hard work must have just been tremendous to get to that point where Steve Mallard comes walking through the door ready to take number one home.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And one of the fascinating things about the ALTA is, this is all very well known now, but for those of you who might not be that familiar with it, it's really the first end-to-end integrated, ground-up, proprietary piece of technology in this space. Freefly, of course, built the Synapse flight control system, but once they had that, and they've been testing it for a couple of years now, the Synapse is not new. It's been out there for a while in the hands of testers, but what they realized is that if they were able to basically integrate the Synapse end-to-end with their power distribution system, with their speed controllers, with their motors, even custom designed props, that they would be able to control the performance and optimize the performance of this platform to an extent that's never been possible in this industry before, and certainly not at a price point of less than $100,000 with military/commercial vehicles. So this was really an accomplishment, and it shows in the use. We talked about this. I just got back from a road trip with some friends doing some incredible filming escapades all over the United States, and flew it in just incredibly challenging environments, and not a single hiccup the entire time.
Right. We were going to show a couple of the photos that you had sent me. Bruce has them keyed up. You had told me you did, there's one. You told me you took it out for, what was it, 10-day road trip across country?
Yeah, this was, we borrowed an RV from a company called Road Trip Nation, who was generous enough to let us take one of their RVs, and we lived in this RV for 10 days, driving from Detroit all the way to Los Angeles.
Wow.
And we flew in environments all the way from the top of the Rockies at 12,000 feet, 20-degree Fahrenheit, and snow falling in the air, filming the entire time, all the way down to near sea level. We actually got to Death Valley, but for obvious reasons, it's a national park, but also there were 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. We couldn't fly there, but flew in all different sorts of situations: cornfields in Iowa and Nebraska, the Badlands of Kansas, just absolutely amazing scenery all across the United States. 35 flights, anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes of airtime, all filming 4K with the Panasonic GH4.
Wow.
Some amazing footage that we captured, and just a delight to fly in and out of the RV in just minutes, set up and in the air. We're able to charge the RV, the batteries in the RV, and it was an amazing experience. And I don't think any other platform would have allowed me that degree of flexibility in terms of, instantaneous, let's just pull over and film something cool.
Sure. No, I can relate. I should mention, we had talked about this and I forgot to mention it at the very beginning when I was introducing you. You are a full retail paying customer. You're not sponsored by Freefly. Freefly isn't, they're not subsidizing what you're doing. They're not, you're not here because Freefly said, hey, give Steve Maller a call. I know you from Multi-Rotor Forums. I know you're active. I know you're very helpful with everybody. You've been on there singing the praises of the ALTA. So you're here because you were invited by me, and everything that you've done has been on your dime, basically. And you're still you're still a happy guy, so that's
full
excellent.
Disclosure, I did get this hoodie from them when I went up to Seattle. So, there was a small amount of graft involved in this,
Right.
but I work cheap.
Yeah.
So people know that about me.
They sent me a T-shirt with the Movi when I got it, but it was a XXL, so it's still in the package. I was never able to do anything with that. But so just give me a quick rundown. We're running a little bit long, which is fine. It's the internet. We could do this as long as we want. Jim Bowers is waiting for us, though. No? All right, we'll work on that. He might be watching. Jim, if you're watching, answer your phone so we can queue you up for the next conversation. But give us a sense with the equipment. Just give us, highlight the strengths, a little bit of a product review. Highlight the strengths of the mechanicals, some features in the flight control that we might not see in your everyday, the thing about Freefly that I've come to appreciate is that with the Movi, it's not just a really smooth, easy to use gimbal. It's got features in there that if you were a camera operator, you would appreciate them because you'd say, wow, this gives me artistic license that I might not otherwise expect from somebody who's just trying to design a smooth gimbal. They inject a little bit of knowledge from their experience working with people in media industries. So is there any of that in the Synops that comes with the Movi? Or is the Synops pretty much a straightforward pilot's flight control system?
Well, most of the features of the Synapse and the ALTA are pretty well known now. But one of the things that I find most useful in, my focus is on photography and cinematography. So, I don't fly this thing. It's not a pod racer. I don't use it to show off to my friends. I use this to capture footage and learning the system so that, like I said, when this does become a commercially viable enterprise, that I'll be ready for that.
Right.
But the way the ALTA, what they describe as velocity clamping, is best described as basically being able to have a dolly in the sky. Mm-hmm. The ability to control the speed of the ALTA, independent of anything else, all the way from literally a fraction of a meter per second up till 3 or 4 meters per second. And to be able to track directly in any of the 3 dimensions, vertically or horizontally, wow, is an extraordinary capability for this system when you talk about filmmaking.
Right.
But even with the position and altitude holds turned off, the ALTA is an amazingly nimble platform. I measured speeds in excess of 50 miles per hour with the ALTA. And even with a Movi M5, which is not the most powerful of Freefly's gimbals, it's actually the least powerful, we were able to hold horizon level, be able to track an RV on the highway. Right. 50 miles an hour is quite fast. And I would challenge most people to be able to fly, a multi-rotor vehicle at anywhere near that speed with a gimbal that would be able to stay solid. And the footage that we got was absolutely remarkable, and it was stunning. And I'm just thrilled. I'm hesitant to push this thing all the way to the limits, but I've seen the videos and I've tried a little bit of it myself.
Right.
And I'm supremely confident in this machine.
What was the mode you said? Velocity lock?
Well, when you put it in position hold and or altitude hold, the velocity is limited. There are the standard Futaba transmitter, but any transmitter you hook it up to, you can set velocity clamping is what they call it, which is basically the maximum speed. So for example, if you wanted to do a very slow descent, you could set velocity clamping to like 1 meter per second, and you can actually pull your throttle all the way down to the bottom on your transmitter, parked where normally it would be throttle off, but the MOVI or the ALTA will descend at a constant rate. And you can adjust that rate while it's ascending or descending. The same thing holds true for horizontal movements, forward, backward, left, right. And when you're in altitude hold, more often than not, sometimes you want to just park the copter in the sky, obviously, but dynamic position hold and dynamic altitude hold are both extremely useful for very, very controlled movements. Like I said, similar to what you'd use with a jib crane or a dolly, but of course you're not bound by the same physical restrictions as you are with those. So it's extraordinarily useful.
Right.
And anyone who's familiar with the film industry will understand the utility of those features. So that's really tremendous. And like I said, I flew it at 12,000 feet. I had friends admonish me to be really, really careful with throttle levels and all that. And you know what? I didn't change a single thing. I just put it out there where it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which was below freezing.
Right.
Took the batteries out of my pocket, stuck them on the copter, powered it up. It did take a little bit of extra throttle to get off the ground, but did a 15-minute flight in absolutely freezing weather. The only problem with that flight I came up with is I realized why some of my friends in Scandinavia and in other very cold places have heating elements on their transmitter, because my fingers were absolutely numb after a 10-minute flight in those kind of temperatures, to the point literally they were numb. I could not feel the ends of my fingers. So, human elements obviously are sometimes challenging, but the copter performed beautifully, and I just couldn't be more happy.
Good. So let's see, is that a 2 thumbs up then? Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I've got the feeling back in my thumbs, so I can definitely give you 2 thumbs up now.
Cool. All right. Well, anything else you want to add? Anything that we skipped over or left out?
No, I'm just thrilled. I appreciate the opportunity to come online, and look forward to the rest of your show.
What's your website for your photography business? Let's give you a plug while you're here.
Thanks. You can actually go on Facebook and look up Steve Maller Photography, and you can find all sorts of stuff there. So I appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
having you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so before we go to the next guest, who's going to be Jim Bowers from sardrones.org. I know Jim, we're having a little trouble reaching him. He's had a tough week. Today's Wednesday, so Monday and Tuesday, he actually responded to an SAR request, search and rescue request, for a missing person out in California. And he was up early, went to bed late, both Monday and Tuesday. I'm not sure what the outcome of the search was. We were going to ask him about that. But if I have to, I'll cover for him. I've researched this. I could talk about it a little bit if I have to. Scott's trying to reach him, but right now I wanted to just take a quick break and thank ALTA.com. They're a new advertiser at multirotorforums.com. You're going to see their banner ads start popping up at the website as of about 2 hours ago, actually. And that's Dave Sobel's company. They're also a distributor for a lot of the companies that they carry. But all ERC, they're a full distributor, cars, airplanes, helicopters, multi-rotor helicopters. They've got a bunch of the new flight controllers, the small stuff that you see, NAS, CC3D, that sort of thing. They're a DJI dealer. So a lot of the stuff that we're flying, they also have the old Gowie 330 kits. I saw those on there, and it brought back a little nostalgia. I was thinking about buying one. Actually, I almost bought a 330 Gowie just before X-Aircraft came out, and I ended up buying an X-Aircraft X650 at the time. That was about 4 years ago at this point, I think. I don't have the X650 anymore. But thank you very much. All ERC, new advertiser, multirotorforums.com. So let's see if we can get Jim. We're going to try him one more time. Scott just spoke to him. We're going to try a different Skype number. So I'll give you the background on the organization that Jim runs, just so we can jump right into it as soon as we get him on the phone. It's going to take a minute to get the Skype set up. And if that doesn't work, Scott's standing by to do his FPV report. So the website is sardrones.org. At the website, you could sign up to be a volunteer pilot. They have a number of criteria established that have to do with safety, knowing your equipment, taking responsibility for your operations, but also when you go to a search operation and you're brought on site, there's going to be a site commander or a search leader who's going to be operating you as one of their resources. So in addition to being professional in terms of how you operate your equipment, you have to be professional in terms of how you coordinate your services and how you work with those people that are on site, because they've got a very big job. They're looking for a missing person. They might be responding to a natural disaster where there's people involved that are at risk or in danger. So Jim's organization is SWARM, SWARM, and it stands for Search with Aerial Multi-Rotor, Search with Aerial RC Multirotors. That's what it is. The RC threw me off. So it's Search with Aerial RC Multirotors, although if you go to the website and you take a look at the people that have volunteered, they're using a variety of aircraft. They're using fixed wing, they're using, and in that includes all of your flying wing, FPV aircraft that people are commonly using, sailplanes, multi-rotor helicopters, single rotor helicopters, and they've actually had some successful searches where they were able to go in and effectively help the overall operation. So what do you think, guys?
We should have audio. Go ahead.
How you doing, Jim? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Very good.
All right.
How are you tonight? I gave
There you
let me just bring you up to speed. I don't know if you were able to hear what I was saying to the people that are listening. I told them after a few tries what SWARM stands for, and gave them a quick overview of your sardrones.org website and how the requirements listed for people that want to volunteer stipulate that they have to be responsible, knowledgeable operators. They have to be able to work with site coordinators where the search is being done. You're just coming off of 2 days yourself. You want to start out by telling us how that went?
It went well. We were off the grid for 2 days, up in the Trinity Forest, and looking for a 38-year-old gentleman who's been missing for a little over a month.
Wow.
And when I get there, I find out that we are right smack dab in the middle of the marijuana growing capital of California, and it was harvest season.
Wow.
So it made for a real challenge to put drones in the air to search for this gentleman. And it added some really new information to what potentially may have happened to him.
Wow. Is this
I went
illegal? Is
in
this a legal
thinking
harvest?
It was, hypothermia or a wild animal or
Right.
something. But, the fact that he was in some really dangerous territory opened up whole new possibilities.
Was this a legal harvest of marijuana, or was this commercially planted in? Was this a crop? Was this a crop being harvested, or was this an illegal operation that you were kind of intermixed with?
Well, a kind of a mix of both.
Oh my
Some
God.
of them are medical. The way it was explained to me is if mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and the grandkids and
Right.
And the neighbor kids all have a medical marijuana card, then you can grow 75 plants.
Wow.
So that's pretty much the way they work the system up there. And we came across pot grows of 300-400 plants.
Wow.
And, flying a DJI Inspire over, miles and miles of forested, very rugged terrain, we would just all of a sudden crest over the top of the hill, and we'd be directly over a bunch of people sitting at tables trimming.
Jeez. Well, there's another
Surprise!
Well, you've discovered a new application for multi-rotor helicopters, searching out pot plants. That's
You broke up just a little bit there. I'm having a little bit of difficulty making out everything.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that's a new application we could potentially launch tonight. A pot or a marijuana farm search operation. But
Yeah, we spent 2 days up there and flew. I'm thinking it was about 27 flights
Wow.
at about 15 to 18 minutes per flight,
Right.
all recorded in high definition.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I'm in the process of uploading all of that video that we shot
Wow.
to a private YouTube channel, and then 3,500 plus swarm volunteer pilots will access those videos, and they'll analyze them and look for anything that I might not have seen or missed.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a lot of eyes, analyzing the video to see if, we didn't find him while we were out there, but that doesn't mean we didn't fly over him.
Right.
So, we look for different things. We look for clues like he was wearing black shorts, he was wearing a green shirt, he may have had flip-flops on, but the family thinks he was actually barefoot because there were some, his shoes were left in his car along with his wallet and his cell phone. And a hired tracker found footprints, reportedly his footprints, down by a pond that's about 100 yards from the trailer that he was staying in on the property.
Wow.
So we look for those kind of clues, but we also have to look for disturbed soil where somebody could have been buried, or sticks and twigs all piled up, out of the ordinary.
Right.
So you've got to kind of look for anything that's out of the ordinary.
Right. So just to backtrack, how did you come about starting this network? I mean, this is a very noble cause that you've taken on, and it's certainly an accomplishment to establish the network that you've established, doing it the way you've done it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a full-time artist. I've been an artist all my life, and long story short, when drones came on the market 4 years ago, we were building our own, because I've been an RC hobbyist flyer, flying fixed-wing airplanes for 15 years. So when drones, and you could buy a little flight controller, the KK2 boards and all that, we were building our own drones. And then when the off-the-shelf drones came out with cameras on them, I was absolutely hooked, because as an artist and a videographer, I was going to places like Yosemite and Monument Valley and the Valley of Fire and all these places and doing documentary videos. I kind of compare it to, I got into an argument with the National Park Service because they wanted to ban drones in Yosemite after the video that I did. If you go to my Demon Seed YouTube channel, I did a
and that's
Yosemite
Demon. Just to interrupt you real quick.
And soon thereafter, they banned all drones in all national parks.
Right. Just to interrupt, hey, Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt. Demon Seed on YouTube. It's DEMUNSEED.
Yeah.
Is that right? Just so if anybody wants to follow up, and there's going to be, just so everybody knows, sorry to interrupt you again, just so everybody knows, when the video archives to YouTube, to the Multi-Rotor Forums YouTube channel, when this show, Drone Radio Live, archives to there, we'll have links in the text underneath the video box for everything that we've discussed during the show. So if anybody has trouble tracking down something we're discussing, if they look at the YouTube channel, I don't know what that was. If they look at the YouTube channel, they'll see links to your Demon Seed YouTube channel. They'll also see links to your Guinness Book of World Records, largest timepiece ever made at Burning Man in 2011 that you told me about. And and so you said,
I've
you're
been trying to get into the Guinness Book since I was a kid on a pogo stick. And
oh, really? What did you try to do when you were a kid, real quick, without killing too much time?
No, I literally tried to break the world record for pogo stick jumps, and
That's awesome.
I failed miserably every time I ever tried to do it.
Right.
And and then also at the Burning Man Festival, my first attempt at the Guinness Book of World Records was to create the longest Chinese festival dragon ever created. So through social networking and all that sort of, I invited people all over the world to build a 10-foot section of the dragon, and they had to only use a specific connector, a PVC connector on each end. And 760 people showed up with one.
Wow.
and or 760 sections showed up, and we put it all together, and it was 1.25 miles long.
Wow.
And I created the fire breathing head for it. It was all about the size of a Volkswagen bus, and we established the record. But before the record was official, the Chinese found out about it, and they created a 3.5 mile long dragon
my
along the
God.
Great Wall of China.
Wow. Well, hey, if nothing else, you had a part in their record. You got in as you got the
Yeah, so
you got the assist on that
smoked it.
one. So anyway, so
Yeah.
getting back to SARdrones.org, the FAA found out about your video that you took in Yosemite, and I'm just trying to establish how you became the lead for the establishment of this swarm group.
Well, 2.5 years ago, I was, like I said, just a full-time artist, and I get a phone call from a local friend of mine here in Colfax, and her fiance had gone missing.
Ah,
And he'd been missing for about 5 days. The
right.
sheriff's department had called off the search.
Mm-hmm.
We had recently had a huge snowstorm here in this area.
Wow.
So they asked me if I would go search for him with my drone, because I was getting very popular here in this small 5,000 person community for being the drone guy. So I went out and searched for him for 4 days, and did everything that I could. And we talked the sheriff's department into searching for one more day along this stretch that I hadn't finished.
Right.
And so they sent a motorcycle team there, and within 15 minutes of starting their search where I left off, they found him crashed and killed over an embankment.
Wow.
So that whole thing affected me so much.
Wow.
You know, I became really close with the family, and they were so incredibly appreciative of my efforts in moving the search forward. You know, even though I didn't find him, they felt like I was instrumental in bringing it to a close. And you know, and I hate to use that word closure. I can't stand it, because I don't know. It's just a word that really
Right.
bothers me.
Right. It's an important concept for the people that go through that kind of a loss.
It
But-
is. It really is. So
Right.
after that whole thing was over, I had the fire, and I also am the promoter for an annual festival here in Colfax called the Fire and Steel Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the festival was over. I took all of the profits and proceeds from it, and I planted 58,000 daffodils
Wow.
along Interstate 80 in honor or in memory of Eric Garcia. And then I decided I'm going to go for it. And I came up with the name and the idea for this worldwide all-volunteer drone pilot search network.
Right.
And so I launched Swarm on Facebook, and we built a website, and
Wow.
it absolutely exploded. I mean, we
Wow.
have
That's awesome.
3,800 pilots now in 44 countries around the world and in all 50 states.
Wow. Well, maybe after tonight, you know, after we've talked about it and we've hopefully exposed you to some more people, we'll get you some more. I might even sign up myself. I have a pretty good fleet of helicopters I've built. So, you know, it's interesting that I think a lot of people, even outside of your network, if they knew there was a need right in their area, they would love to step forward and get involved. So your network being available, being able to put search and rescue professionals in touch with the volunteers that want to bring their aerial
Yeah,
equipment out and assist, you know, that's fantastic.
I didn't catch all of that, but the way Swarm operates is because of FAA guidelines and regulations.
Right.
I can't go to an official law enforcement agency or search and rescue organization and say, I'd like to fly my drone in your search and rescues, because of liability
Right.
and commercial guidelines and privacy issues. All of them will run for the hills.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we set Swarm up is we work directly through the families of the victims.
Oh, interesting.
So we're flying technically as hobbyists. So when mom calls me and says my son has gone missing, we just show up on scene, and first we investigate to make sure there aren't going to be any search aircraft in the airspace, and
Mm-hmm.
it's safe to fly, and we have control of the situation, and we do our investigative ground study, and then we prioritize the target or targets,
Right.
and try not to waste any time in the air, wandering around. If
Right.
we're only on scene for 2 days, we want to cover as many high value areas as we possibly can. So
Sure.
it's very crucial, because you only get 18 minutes in the air per battery on
Right.
average. So you've got to maximize your effort.
What are a couple things you'd recommend for somebody who's seeing this for the first time, myself included, who might say to themselves, I'd like to be listed at your website. I'd like to make myself available to the families that are going through this. What do you say to new people? How do you get them involved? What do you recommend?
Well, for one thing, I used to qualify pilots that would apply, and number one, find out what kind of experience they have flying,
Mm-hmm.
what equipment they have, whether they're FPV capable. In other words, they have a camera on it and they can view live while they're flying, and they can record high definition, all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But then I found out or realized that there were a lot of people that just wanted to get involved in any capacity. They wanted to help us, support us, offer advice because they were qualified search and rescue, fire department, all that sort of thing. They didn't have a drone, but they wanted to be a part of Swarm. So I opened it up. I decided we're going to let everyone be a part of the Swarm network, but we'll categorize them into either mission pilots or supporters or Swarm supporters. So yeah, we don't turn anybody away if they want to be a part of the group. Now we have excluded a few people after they join the Swarm network for inappropriate actions or behavior or the way they treat people online or whatever, but that doesn't happen very often.
Okay. So we're just trying to coordinate the next segment here to keep things moving along. Tell me about, this is something that I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up. What has been the success rate? Has this something where from around the world you've had a number of successes that you've been able to log or you've been able to attribute to the service? Have they been few and far between? What's the success rate?
Well, nowadays we're involved in some sort of a mission or task pretty much all the time. There's something going on somewhere.
Wow.
I mean, I'm the director and founder, and I'm working 2 here in the Northern California area right now, which is very, very odd.
Right.
And because I've got Swarm pilots out there that have been with Swarm for 2 years now, and they've never been called up because they may live in a small community or just nobody's gone missing. And if they have gone missing, they haven't requested our assistance.
Mm-hmm.
So, I let all of our pilots know very sternly that if you're serious about this, when you do get a phone call from me, you damn well better drop what you're doing because I may never call you again.
Right.
Because you may not ever get another opportunity to go out and assist.
Sure.
And it's a little bit difficult. I'm actually working on a training video right now that is this mission that I just came off of. We documented the entire thing and the relationship with the family and the conversations we had with them, because I think when these pilots see firsthand what these families are actually going through, the grief and the panic, and they'll do anything to get help in getting that closure. So I think it's going to be a really valuable tool, and I think a lot of our volunteers will look at it in a whole different light after they watch this video.
Right, like you've really managed with this last search to put a a personal element in the conversation
yeah.
with the people that are involved.
We put a face to it, and a mother, a grieving mother, and and the whole, all of it. And so I think it's going to work really well. As
Cool.
far as successes go, one of the things we've never done is, and this mission that I just flew is a little bit different, because ahead of time I discussed with the family that I would like to create a training video and a tribute to Shannon House, who's the young man who went missing. And so I explained it all to them up front, and they said, sure, go ahead and do that. But normally, we don't disclose anything. We keep all of our information and our successes and our everything private, because it's not something we want to put out there and try to sensationalize ourselves with. We don't want all this credit and media and the drones came to the rescue and all that sort of thing, because then it just sort of it cheapens us a little bit, and it takes the attention away from the real issue, and that was the victim himself. So we usually don't share a lot of information. We have had successes, but I will tell you that up to now, we haven't had a drone successfully rescue somebody alive. And the reason for that was kind of a revelation to me too. After a year and a half doing this, I looked at all the data, and what tends to happen is they call in the drones when all of their other efforts have been exhausted.
Right.
They call us as a last resort and beg for our help to continue the search, as opposed to just giving up.
Like when the professionals give up,
yeah,
they reach
so by
out
the
to you
time
and
we
say,
get
hey, we'd
called
like to
in,
continue, we need your help.
Yeah, by the time we get called in, it's 80% a recovery as opposed to a rescue.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that's something that'll probably change, and you'll probably see that happen, gradually, where the professionals will grow to appreciate your efforts. They'll grow to appreciate your capabilities, and as you get a track record of being professional on scene, working with them, I would think over time that you'll start to get called in earlier and earlier.
I see that happening. They're gradually warming up to drone technology.
Right.
And we're just now starting to talk to law enforcement and the fire departments into at least taking a look at the potential. Where a year ago that they wouldn't even use the word drone, let alone consider, putting one up in the air.
Right. Well,
so we're getting there. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's just going to take some time.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up there, I think. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Anything else that we might have left out?
Now, if they want to take a look at the Swarm Network, whether they're a drone pilot or not, they're welcome to join us on our Facebook forum. They can first go over to www.sardrones.org and read up on us, and especially take a look at our SOP, which is our standard operating procedure.
Right.
And as long as they abide by those guidelines, they're more than welcome to click on the Facebook link and join our network.
All right. I'll probably be seeing you on there myself very soon. Thank you very much, Jim Bowers from the Swarm Network, sardrones.org.
You're quite welcome. Glad we could hook up and get together.
Appreciate it, Jim. Thank you very much for coming on. If you ever, it's an open invitation. What you're doing is fantastic. I certainly appreciate the heart and the time that you've put into it. So you would be somebody that has an open invitation to come on whenever you want and discuss what you're working on. By all means, just shoot me an email and we'll open up a spot for you. Anything we can do to help, okay?
I appreciate it very much. Thanks, guys.
All right, have a great night, Jim. Thank you. Okay, so we're most of the way through the show. We have a couple of segments left. And also, at the end of the show, we're going to speak with Scott Norton. He's doing our FPV report. And then we're going to have Scott Hess from Flying Cross Aerial Productions. He's our featured pro for the week. After that, we're going to open up the Skype lines for our one or two viewers that want to call in. That'll be on Drone Radio Live 1 and Drone Radio Live 2. Those are our two Skype accounts that we set up. You don't have to make a contact with us Those lines are set up to accept calls from anybody. So we'll be doing that after Scott's segment. We'll sit here for a couple minutes. If nobody calls, we'll wrap it up. Otherwise, we're going to take a couple of live calls and let things, let the chips fall where they may. So without further ado, he goes by Moto Preserve at the website. This is Scott Norton, resident of what section of Brooklyn? Williamsburg, Brooklyn. He's a multi-rotor helicopter builder and flyer. He's a moderator at multirotorforums.com, and we've also recruited him to do product reviews. So you've been a product review author for the last couple of years. You did our Phantom 2 product review.
Phantom 2 and TT Robotics. And
Exactly.
Yeah, done a handful.
That's right. So Scott's volunteered to do our FPV and FPV racing segments. So today we're going to talk about, because this is a new show, we're not just going to go right up into the expert stuff. We're going to talk about if you're an FPV flyer and you're coming out to meet up with a club for the first time, or you've been flying and you're showing up at a race, some of the things that you might expect, how to get involved, those sort of things. So
Yeah, I thought it would be good to kind of touch base and just touch on the basic things that you might expect. If you're getting into FPV racing for the first time,
right.
Or you have an interest in getting into FPV racing, one thing that I've found is that it is constantly evolving, and it's still just becoming solidified in terms of what is expected when you get to the field,
Right.
What kind of races there may be on any given day. So really, with it evolving so fast and,
Right.
and coming up so quickly, there are obviously tons of products that you can buy. I get daily, I get emails from the usual suspects, the retailers that are
Right.
that are advertising new and
You're going to get more now.
new
especially if
and
the show
exciting
catches on.
products, right? Excuse me, but I think there's some fairly basic things that we could go through just as a sort of intro.
Well, let's talk about the classes real quick, and then we'll get into showing up for race day, some of the things that you can expect, and then the league. So, just generally speaking, what are the classes that the leagues have more or less formed up around?
I think the one thing that does seem consistent amongst the different races and the different groups that make up the leagues is
Right.
that the 250 size class seems to be a fairly
Right.
solid standard.
And 250, what he's talking about is
Motor to
250 millimeters, and let's use my scale.
If only you had the largest caliper known to man. Oh, right
Oh,
here.
I just happen to have that right here. Let's use our scale. So 250, and it happens to be inches and millimeters.
There you go.
So center to center on the motors. Let's just lift this up. You can't see the scale.
Can't see the scale, but yeah.
That distance is 250 millimeters across. And that allows you to use 5-inch propellers. And with a 5-inch propeller, you can use a variety of motors depending on whether you're running 3, 4, maybe 6S battery packs. It'll either give you a manageable amount of power or a sick amount of power.
Right.
And the race classes take that into account.
Yeah, the other classes that are starting
But the low end, but real quick, the low end is spec racing, which is 3S power,
3S power, 5-inch prop max.
5-inch props on a 250 size frame.
On a 250 size frame.
With 1806 motors and 2300 kV. Right. That'll max out about 45 miles an hour.
As if that's too slow. But yes.
It's control.
There
it's
are
all control.
and obviously there are 4S craft
Slide
that
over
are
a little
going.
bit. We're gonna tweak
there
our
are-
format a little
yeah.
bit. Look into the camera.
I'm
Let
still
everyone see
still
that.
waiting for hair and makeup. But
Hair and makeup.
But so no, and there are some of these craft are getting up to 70 miles an hour. So clearly 40 and 45 miles an hour would be on the more mellow side of the
Right.
racing. But there are other classes cropping up. The 250 seems to be a pretty decent standard right now that everyone can agree upon. There are now micro classes that are popping up that would be anywhere between 150 to 180 millimeters.
Right.
So you don't need your caliper, but you could imagine even slightly smaller than this one here. There are 450 classes popping up, and then there are open classes. So anything that you'd like to fly that you're racing via FPV.
Right, now this, everyone should know, at this point in the game, the way it's progressing, this isn't NASCAR style racing. This is more like road course, this is more like F1. It's agility,
Exactly right.
it's agility, control not just of speed, but of deceleration. That's actually why One Shot's catching on, because, you know, with the ESCs, it gives you active braking across the whole throttle range.
Yeah, exactly right.
So that, you know, you can control speed with the throttle going down almost to the same point you can control it going up.
Right, because you're going to see the experts are not necessarily full throttle until they get close to the gate, and then no throttle to kind of try to,
Right.
of course you can't coast, but try to do that kind of thing.
Right.
If you can keep acceleration through the turn, obviously
Right.
you're going to come out way ahead. So
Right, so it's not about, but it's not about straight out, these aren't muscle cars
They
of
are-
the FPV world. These
No.
are agility, you know, maneuvering. And somebody had said to me at a race day a few weeks ago, one of the guys that I had met with a new group that I'm flying with, he had said that his lap times are no better with his 4S powered 250 frame. They're no better with that than they are with 3S power.
if I would believe if the course is set up well, then it
Yeah.
is going to come down to piloting skills
Exactly.
much more than it would be the raw power. I think if you listen to any of these racers that are coming in the top of their classes, I think what you're going to find is that they're actually saying that they're not opening it up unless there is a good.
Long straightaway.
Exactly right, which
Right.
would be exactly the same in MotoGP motorcycle racing or
Right.
Formula One car
Sure.
racing. Same thing. These cars are capable of a heck of a lot, but if you're piloting them correctly, you're probably not going to be taking advantage of that, you know, but maybe 20% of the time.
So if you want to get started, just to kind of summarize that little part, 250 spec racer,
Yeah.
1806 motors, I think they are,
Yeah.
2300 kV, 5-inch props in a 3S battery pack. It's manageable. It carries a battery that flies you for 6 or 7 minutes
Yep.
and allows you to get out, fly, develop some skills. There's a lot of people racing that class right now. It's easy to find a group. It's easy to fit in. So when you show up at the club,
Yeah, and it's probably important to note that would certainly be the most popular of the classes,
Right.
whether there are multiple classes on the day or not.
Right.
So it's important to know that showing up with enough time, having a video transmitter
Right.
that has, if at all possible, the race spec bands, but certainly
so
the
it's
30.
40 channels.
Exactly right, or at least 32 channels, so that you have the time and can spend a little bit of time with race direction to make sure that your video transmitter is not interfering with other people, because at the 250 class and it being
Right.
a spec class, there are going to be more people racing on
Right,
a given
right,
day,
right,
and
right,
that obviously it'd be a little bit easier if there are only 2 or 3 people racing in a given race. But
Right.
so yeah, on the day, I think the most important thing I think is to check, because it is evolving so quickly. Even some of these organized races are sort of changing what's required for that given race, and it could be happening very quickly. I mean,
Right.
so it's best to check with your local groups. If you're planning on showing up to a race, it's best to check with them and see what they're speccing out for that particular race.
Right.
That way you know you're showing up with a craft
right,
that'll
right.
fit in. I think one of the big things is getting to the field early, and as I mentioned, the biggest problem that they've been having, and certainly they had it more before they got into the race spec 40-channel video transmitter, was having interference between frequencies. So I turn on my transmitter and
Right.
you turn on your transmitter, and I'm seeing
Oh yeah, you see
your
it.
craft.
Yeah.
Not great for racing, obviously.
No, but also just to speak to that, with the popularity of aerial media and the popularity of FPV and wanting to go a little farther than maybe your field boundaries,
Right.
everyone was gravitating towards higher and higher power output
Right.
transmitters. So here you have maybe a 600 watt immersion RC transmitter that only has 8 frequencies, 600 milliwatts of power.
Right.
And now you show up on race day because you picked it up in a forum in a classified ad or something.
Right.
You think, hey, it's a video transmitter, I'm going to fly with it. And you find out, you turn it on, and it's blasting and interfering.
And everybody is ticked
Yeah,
off because
everyone
you're
else
now
starts
bleeding into
screaming.
right.
You got a bunch of guys with goggles on that are all yelling.
Right. I mean, for the kind
I'm hit.
of multi-rotors that I think
Right.
you and I both started building, like this kind of thing here.
Yeah.
600 quickly became the most popular.
Oh yeah.
25 would be considered the most popular now for the FPV racing, because I think what people are finding is that it's plenty for the distance of the race. They're not going so far in distance that
That's
you're
right.
going to run
25
out
to
of.
200, depending
Exactly.
on...
Is more than enough. If you have the 40 channels, great. Even 32 channels can help, obviously.
Right.
But what you're finding is that they're almost every race is going to allow for about an hour beforehand to get there. It is required that you do not turn your transmitter on, but
Right.
that you fire up your VTX, your video transmitter, get a check around of what's going on, make sure you're not bleeding into some of your opponents'
Right.
the competition's goggles or monitor.
I'm just looking at this this Wakera, what's it called, a Runner 250.
Runner 250. Yeah.
With the, just one last detail on
Yeah.
the video transmitters, with the races becoming more of a formal event and not just a bunch of guys kind of getting out and flying around like backstops and whatnot, time in between the races is actually becoming an issue as well. They don't want the day to go on forever, so
Sure.
they say, okay, you're going to have 5 minutes in between races, and if you happen to be in 2 consecutive heats where you're assigned 2 different frequencies,
Right.
you need to be able to switch frequencies on the fly, swap out your battery packs, and get in and keep racing. So this little FPV quad has access through a couple of holes in the frame to the little dip switches that are used for changing the frequencies. So if you happen to be thinking about your first build, maybe it's on the bench and you're sitting here streaming the show.
Make sure it's
as
accessible.
you're wrenching on your helicopter, don't attach it to the helicopter and zip tie it with those dip switches down against the frame. They've got to be open. You've got to be able to take out your little frequency card that came with the transmitter and just hit the dip switches so you can get right back out and race. And this one has that. So I was just curious as Scott was talking whether or not they took that into account, and
they did.
And they did, which is cool. So
so it's important to have access to that. The other thing to keep in mind is that the races are more and more. The races are being timed by transponders, exactly the way a
that's
car
another
or
piece
a,
of equipment
or a
they
motorcycle.
need. Right.
So sometimes, occasion, it seems to be. It's becoming more common that the race itself may have transponders or timing systems that are available to you at the race.
Yeah, some of the races they're selling them. They're about $35 or $40.
Some
you pick them
provide
up the day of the
them,
race.
or you can get them there, or you can rent them occasionally, or you might need to own your own. And again, that's something to check before.
I also saw in one of the groups online somewhere, somebody was trying to generate interest for an open source transponder project, just so that
So it just makes it
just
a
keeping
little
with the
bit-
theme
yeah,
of
and a little
the
bit cheaper,
community and
Right.
self-sourcing things from within the brain trust that's already
And,
there
and
doing
I'm sure
stuff.
with the type of technology that goes into these small racers, I'm sure that there are people out there that would be able to figure that out, and hopefully they will. They'll keep the cost down. Because
it'll all be on one little card. We'll just
right, exactly,
plug it right in.
So something to keep in mind is that
Eventually.
you are, whether you have to buy it yourself, that would take care of it. If you are going to rent it the day of,
Right.
you need to leave enough space on the craft itself
Right.
where it can be. Oh, you want to keep it as far away from everything else as
Right.
possible. Obviously, on a small
And
racer.
hey, if the worst thing that happens is you show up for a race day with your helicopter, with all your stuff, and it ends up being a dry run because some element that's required for you to participate can't be met, well, stick around, meet the people that you might be racing with next time, see how they do things. Every little bit of information that you can gather, whether you fly or not,
is going to help for the
is
next
going to
race.
help, and it's going to help the next event run smoothly when
and
everybody understands what's happening.
What I've found is that much like the greater multi-rotor community, the community is quite tight. And I would be very surprised if you couldn't actually speak to someone who might
Right.
actually finish a heat
Right.
and lend you their transponder for the next heat. if
Right,
you
right,
were
right. Yeah, everyone's
booked
been
in
very
there.
supportive of that. I've seen.
It's
It'll
a
get
pretty-
competitive as it
is
gets
gonna
more
get-
mature.
Well, and as you know,
You notice I haven't shown any of my racing frames. You've seen my beater stuff, but my hybrid racing frame hasn't been exposed yet.
with a $100,000 purse at the end of next year.
I
mean,
know,
Yeah,
it's
people are going
gonna
to get
get
a little bit more
competitive.
cutthroat, but I think one thing, just a general overview, is like any time that we might go out with a larger craft, but even more important is clearly the most important thing to have extras on hand would be props. Most people bring
Right.
props.
Bring a lot of props.
Bring a lot of props. And I think a lot of these, I don't know so much about this one with the bottom plate, but I would say a lot of these FPV racers that I've seen are built with pretty darn thick, and since it's
Yeah.
small enough, thick carbon fiber. A lot of people have crashed these, I would almost say successfully, minus the props. You've changed some props out. The ESCs are okay, the motor's
Yeah.
okay, the frame is certainly okay.
Yeah, that
But
Hornet that we used as a product review in episode 1, the
They're
Hornet
tough.
250. That thing is cartwheeled.
Yeah.
It's gone into trees and tumbled down through the
Yeah.
trees. That thing has turned out to be a tank.
Yeah.
I've flown it a few different times, run a bunch of battery packs through it, ripped around, cartwheeled it, tumbled it, like I said, into a tree, through the branches, and
It just keeps on ticking.
there was one thing that happened to it. I can't remember what it was, but it didn't involve a structural failure. It was just, propellers and stuff. I broke the arm on my flame wheel finally, trying to thrash that around a little too much. So,
Right, but I mean,
yeah,
they're
props
built
are
strong.
the number one.
Props would be the number one. But
disposable item.
if you're taking a drive for a day to enjoy some racing, probably not a bad idea to have a motor or two, a spare motor or
Right.
two, spare ESC or two. But certainly props being the most key.
And also when you're building it, to build repairability into it as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Don't bury your motor connections inside
Absolutely.
the frame
I
where
mean,
you can't
and
get
that's
to them in the course
that's
of
something that's interesting to point
an
out
afternoon.
about something like this is that they actually are using a proprietary ESC that plugs in a very particular way. This would not be easily repairable at the field, this particular one. But if you were building your own, I think having a couple of, most people have gotten used to ordering, especially if you're ordering from China, like
From
you
China,
had mentioned
yeah.
before, that you
What
don't know
the
when it's
F?
going to come, so you better order 7 instead of 4.
Yeah,
just
no.
just in
Oh
case.
yeah, that goes without
'cause,
saying. If you're buying 4 motors,
Yeah.
buy at least 5.
Yeah, at
and
least,
ESCs,
at very least.
buy at least 1 or 2 extras.
Yeah.
And propellers.
And with the rate that it comes, you're probably
buy a
actually
lot.
buying enough for the next build. So if it's 4,
Right,
that's 5,
that's
but
right.
5 is 10. You just kind of
Exactly.
keep moving on. But,
Exactly.
so I mean, that's there's some basic stuff that I think you would follow with almost any type of multi-rotor activity. Making sure that you give a call or an email ahead to make sure that you're going to fit into a particular class, because they do have open classes. So I think everybody's going to be able to have a good time and race. If you're looking to accumulate points and whatnot towards some of the sanctioned events,
Right.
that would be, and that's something we'll talk about in the future. But I think knowing where your craft fits into the classes,
Right.
where your motors fit into the classes, where your also where your batteries fit into the classes.
Right.
Obviously, bringing a way to charge your batteries at the field, you hopefully get a decent amount of, and it could be upwards of 20 minutes to an hour of practice time before a given heat. Obviously,
Right.
heats are quick, but
And
you're
that's
going to need
another
some
thing
batteries.
too. When you go to the field, it's really tempting. Just like if you're playing in a band and everyone's trying to tune up and do sound checks, it's very easy. You just want to start playing.
Right.
So when you're at the field, pay attention to when it's okay to fire up and go fly, and when it's not okay, because these things, as they become more competitive, as they become more organized, they're going to frown upon people just showing up who don't really know the drill, firing up and just flying around and thrashing their helicopters, especially if you're too close to bystanders or people that are innocently working in the
Right.
kits, or working in the pits trying to get their gear ready. So just be aware, if you're new to it, what's going on around you, what the other people are doing, before you attach battery power and start flying around.
Yeah, and I think
I made that mistake.
they're coalescing a group of rules that
Yeah.
that seem to be, and even you actually started to mention before, they seem to be coming up, and again, it's sort of evolving. I think after this East Coast winter, at least, by next year they'll be.
If anybody's watching from any of these FPV racing leagues,
Call in.
we need, call in, but we need cohesion between all the different groups, because we originally set up this segment for FPV racing to be about the different leagues and the requirements, and we found out in researching it, or Scott found out, there aren't enough points of consistency from one group to the next.
Right.
So somebody might see something online, hey, this is a big group, they must be all over the place, I'll bet you those specs are standard. Chances are they're not. So we're gonna have people building things, trying to fly things, and then finding out when they go to their local group, they might adhere to a different set of spec rules from a different league. And so there isn't consistency. And as a group, in order to grow and in order to be able to do this kind of stuff, we need that consistency. So let's get a spec class. Let's get a 250 4S spec class. Let's get these different things ironed out as groups. We could all have our different leagues and be in different parts of the world.
But I think, yeah.
But let's start working on coming up with more consistent classes so that it'll grow in a way that's constructive, and where people, you could be going on vacation in Florida. If there's an FPV race, it's really easy to throw your kit.
Right, and as the
And
rules,
take it with you.
as the rules and regulations coalesce, you'll know that when you put that craft into your bag to take down to Florida, that you it will be appropriate
Exactly.
for a race that you might get to.
Exactly.
I think they're trying to. It seems. I don't want to.
You're saying it's happening.
It is happening, but it just is not done yet.
Yeah,
so
sure.
you're seeing it happen, and it's happening quite rapidly. I mean, I think it's safe to say that last season was the first big FPV racing season.
Sure.
It was certainly more robust than it had been in the past. And it is coming together, and you have groups that seem to be joining in with other groups that are starting to create a more sanctioned event,
Right.
or a sanctioning body that's trying to keep an eye on what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely catching on. I mean,
it is certainly
just the money
catching
that's
It's
money that's coming up for the
it's by
different
far the
races.
the fastest growing segment of the multi-rotor groups, I think.
Right. Okay.
I think that just the last thing I would say is that and this is something also to check, this is something that seemed the information is out there for a given event much more clearly, I found. Always good to check in beforehand, but some will require an AMA membership. They will offer the possibility of signing up at the field,
Right.
But it's good to know that beforehand because you don't want to obviously get there and not be able to race because you're not an AMA member.
Right.
I think I think that's a great thing to have going on. I think the reason they're doing that, or one of the big reasons, would be the coverage, the insurance coverage that provides for people. So there is definitely there's an emphasis on safety. That's typically with the weight. The one thing, even with open class, that they might put a cap on. It's almost everybody can race unless you are too heavy, and they will stress the fact that is strictly because of keeping it safe. They don't
Right.
want something too fast, too
Right,
heavy
right, right,
flying
right,
over
right.
people's heads.
Also,
so.
don't be surprised if you show up to race and they want to see you fly. Don't be surprised if they tell
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
grab a battery pack, go out on the course. We want to see you run the gates a little bit before we can actually put you into the system and start scheduling you.
Yeah.
They also might have safety people. It's not uncommon. A lot of different types of motorsports have safety officers. They might want to take a look at your build, make sure if you've soldered a bunch of stuff, it's not cold soldered, so it's going to fall apart in the middle of a race.
Right.
So you're not putting other racers or spectators at risk.
Yeah,
so
and-
safety
and-
officers, qualifying, all those things probably
Most
are going to
races
become
will
standard.
will have race direction that takes
Right.
a look at your craft, make sure that everything
Right.
seems good before you get out there.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's what that 1 hour before. A lot of these races are having at least an hour before, where you're able to not only work out your frequencies and make sure you're not hopping onto someone else's frequency, but more importantly, give it a shakedown. Make sure it's running okay. Make sure it's not falling out of the sky while you're doing 40 to 70 miles an hour. So.
Okay.
All right.
What else?
That's what I had for the first FPV segment. I think
Okay.
that covers. I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to cover, but I think that covers a good intro at least.
Yeah.
And
I think it gives people a pretty good idea of what to expect once they show up or once they're planning on showing up.
Yeah.
Now, the goal that we've discussed is making it out to Hawaii next year.
Yeah. for
Not
the
just to do, what's that?
for the championship.
For the championships. And I'd like to think that we could show up and
either get some great coverage or win the $100,000. Either way, I would be happy.
you know what? I'll do the show for a year for free if we could win the $100,000. But no, it would be nice if we could show up and race in addition to trying
Yeah.
to do coverage for multirotorforums.com and
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
doing a show live. We'll take Bruce with us.
Yeah,
Bruce,
that-
would you go to Hawaii, run the show for us?
I'm on my way.
He's,
There you
he's
go.
packing his bag.
Start
All right, well,
start
cool.
walking now. Awesome.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
We'll look forward to future installments.
Yes.
Scott Norton, Motor Preserve, our FPV racing coordinator. So next up on Skype, and this is running long tonight, which we can do because it's the internet. And I had said to Bruce originally, I said, Bruce, it's going to be the 90-minute radio, the International Drone Radio Hour. It's going to be a 90-minute show. And he said, that doesn't make sense, and nobody does a 90-minute show. So we're doing a 90-minute show right now. We're going to talk to Scott Hess real quick, and then we'll take a couple phone calls, and then I'm going to go to bed. So Scott, thank you for waiting. I'm sorry we're running so late.
No problem, Bart. How are you tonight?
Very good. Let me introduce you real quick. This is Scott Hess. He's down in Austin, Texas. His company is Flying Cross Aerial Productions. He's a full-scale pilot. He's a 333 exempted operation, which allows him to be on here and show his face. We didn't have to put a black sack over his head and have him go by anonymous.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, just like everybody else. How is it that you and I have come to speak together tonight?
Well, first of all, Bart, congratulations on the show
Thank
and
you.
on multirotorforums.com. It's
Thank
a
you.
fantastic place to be and get information.
Thank you. And thank
There's
you
just tons of it there.
Thank you for being helpful at the site. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And well, I do have a career in television broadcasting starting in the early 80s. And when I got wind of Bart's endeavor here, I decided to offer my services and some of the live television experience that I have. And later, after I left news, doing a lot of internet broadcasting myself as part of a small business that I had, and I sort of wanted to contribute back some of the information that I've stolen from the forums. So.
Right. So you're a full-scale pilot. You've got a
Yes.
career in broadcasting and video production.
Yep.
And it was through your participation in aerial shots as a pilot that you then segued into unmanned SUAS. for
Yeah,
lack of a
so
better
I
word,
mean, I did
drones.
start in news in the early 80s, like I said, and I was in Boston. I did that for about 16 years and then started my own business, which I did for about another 12 years, doing production, corporate production, a lot of news.
Right.
And along those 20-odd years, I did a tremendous amount of work in full-scale helicopters,
Right.
as a camera operator, and also was very involved with a gentleman in the Boston area, Mike Peavy, who does a lot of film work.
Right.
He's a fellow pilot, and I shared a hangar with him. And as a mechanic, as an A&P mechanic, I did a lot of the camera installs for him, as well as operated the cameras, for a lot of the Hollywood films. Not me on the Hollywood films, but did a lot of the camera installs for him and his Jet Ranger. And it just was a logical place for me to be as a pilot and as a camera person. And it was about 2 years ago that I became very interested. I've been following the whole sort of drone revolution and
Right.
for some time, obviously aware that people had been doing this with small RC helicopters, even
Right.
further back. And I decided to jump into it. I started, again, I didn't pay my dues like you guys did with, the late nights, repairing crashed birds and so forth.
Jiggly, no.
I bypassed all that.
not just repairing
thanks to all the
helicop-
information in the forums.
Not just repairing helicopters, but trying to tune the jiggles out of camera mounts that were never intended to make smooth.
Exactly.
smooth
And
footage.
I got into it with a little Phantom, and I was just blown away by the quality. Here you have this, $1,500, really a toy. And it was just as good as all the stuff we would shoot from their full scale helicopters, with at 100 times the cost.
Right.
Obviously with limitations. I say that a little bit kiddingly, but
Right.
but still I was hooked immediately, and I thought, well, maybe this is something that I can use to augment my business, in the video production world.
Right.
And it seemed natural, as a pilot and a mechanic and a cameraman. So I jumped in, and thanks to all the guys on the forum. I think I read. I don't want to say I've read every post, but I've read damn near all of them. I think.
Right.
And thanks to the guys like Steve Blizzard, pouring out all this valuable stuff. And, Andrew Rains from Hexacrafter.
Right.
I couldn't have done this without all that. And what I have done is, I've built a nice little side business. It's not I'm not going to make it become a millionaire off of it, but I'm pretty happy with with what I have coming in as far as business and revenue. It's
Sure.
a tremendous amount of fun.
Sure. So tell me a little bit about your company, Aerial Cross. What types of operations have you been involved in? What are you capable of service? What kind of services you are capable?
Right.
Let me try again. What kind of services are you capable of providing? Give us
Yes.
a quick overview professionally of your operation.
Well, I do what interests me, which I think is a very small segment of the UAV sort of market, which is aerial videography, cinematography.
Right.
I think that's a very small piece of it, but that's what I like to do, and that's why I'm there. And so to that end, I've done car commercials like a lot of folks, documentary television, reality TV. I've done one feature. I'll be working on another feature this weekend. Stuff like that. No real. And in the beginning, when I had the Phantom, I did some industrial type of things.
Right.
that was sort of got me going. And,
Right, you do the work that's suited to the equipment you have. That makes sense.
Yes, exactly. I think I cut you out. Say that again now.
I said you do the work that your equipment is suited for.
Right,
If,
exactly.
You can't go
And,
out
you
and
know,
do
and
a
it-
full feature film with a Phantom.
Correct.
could try.
Although
You might get
you
away
do
with
see
it.
GoPros on the features
Yeah.
after all, don't you? But and it's not, these aren't big features. I don't want to make it sound like this is, I'm working in Hollywood, but they're local features and still a lot of fun.
Right.
And I've been flying, from the DSLR. The GH4 obviously is a very popular rig.
Got one right here.
And I have, thanks to the Hexacrafter that I have now, I've been flying some of the bigger cinema type cameras, Red Epic and so forth. And it's great. I thought real aviation was fun. I've built and restored and overhauled and a lot of full size airplanes. And if you think you can spend money there, well, I'm spending just about as much.
Right.
With these things I have over my shoulder here. I mean, it's amazing how much money you can dump into it. So, but I think I'm ahead of the game at least right now.
Let me ask you a question real quick. The reason that I thought to include professional operators and basically give free plugs to companies like yourself, operating with the 333 exemption, with insurance, with
Right.
other professional people in the community that take advantage of your services. The reason I included this as a segment in the show is just to demonstrate that there is a standard that a lot of us should be working towards as we're doing this with our unmanned aircraft, because there's a lot of pockets of activity around the internet where people are doing whatever they want with no regard for safety, with
That's
no
right.
regard for personal responsibility. So what is it as a professional, and we'll wrap this up in a couple of minutes and we'll get on
Sure.
to some of the calls. I know we have at least one waiting. What is it in your operation as a professional that you think makes you able to go out and interact with cinema companies, advertising agencies, different kinds of marketing, production companies that might do something like you said, a corporate video production, a commercial, a promotion, something like that. What is it in your habits that you think makes you professional?
Well, I mean, I think I try to bring a lot of the safety aspects of full-size aviation to the drones. Safety for one thing, redundancy, attention to detail. That comes through when you're talking to these clients. They can tell pretty right away whether you're a hobbyist that's always wanted to do this or whether you've sort of been in the business, I think. And even though I don't have a very long career, much experience, certainly compared to you, and many of your listeners, and viewers and multi-rotor forum clients, doing this professionally, but with the UAV, but I do sort of I try to bring the my other levels of experience, working in and around sometimes pretty high pressure situations.
Right.
It's really not any different, I don't think.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you referenced back to the full-scale experience as a pilot.
Well, yeah,
as a
and
mechanic.
I have had clients tell me that was why they chose me, to work with them.
Cool. Anything else you want to
that's
add? What's your next big project? Where should we look for you?
Well, gosh,
Super Bowl
again,
commercial?
it's I'm not doing this every day.
Right.
But I do have some reality TV going on this weekend, and I'll be working on another small independent feature in South Texas this weekend as well, and a few other things coming up. I've got there's a Discovery Channel shoot that's out there.
Cool.
All
All right.
right.
Well, thank you for joining us, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so
And-
much, Bart, and once again, congratulations on the show, and
Thank
I
you.
wish you the very best.
And thank you again for your help getting
All
the
right.
studio set up and
Absolutely.
getting our stuff online. We really appreciate it.
All right, man. Well,
All right,
good luck.
Scott.
Time to go to bed. Don't you have to fly to Italy in the morning?
I go
Or
to
that
Italy
was the other
tomorrow.
day?
But yeah, thank you for participating. We appreciate it.
Okay.
See you,
All
Scott.
right. Okay, good night.
Bye. Okay, so that wraps it up for the scheduled part of the show. We're going to take a couple of calls on Skype. Have your video cameras on. Feel free to use your webcams to show off your latest builds, to show something you might have purchased and either been very happy or maybe not so happy about. But this is the part of the show where we get to interact with you guys, and it's your show. So who wants to be first? If you're size large or extra large, can you get one of those t-shirts? Some of you guys saw in the last show, right around the corner here. It's a black t-shirt. It says, "We come in peace." And on the back, it's got some fat line art that a tattoo artist from New York City did for me. His name's Mark Harada. So the reason we come in peace was because when we were first doing this shirt, drones were seen as bad. They were on the news maybe once a week, and it was always something very ominous, drones, and lots of military drone stuff was up there as well. So we come in peace on the shirt to let people know that we're peaceful drones. And then on the back was the artwork that was done. It says multirotorforums.com. It's kind of a skull. There's a little transmitting thing up on the top there. But that was Mark Harada, like I said, a tattoo artist from New York City that did that for us. And somebody had asked me, we'll just leave it there for now. Somebody had asked during that 1 hour review of Real Flight Drone what that shirt was. And if you're size large or extra large, first person calling in gets a free t-shirt. So who is it? Who are we speaking with? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Bart. This is Steve.
Hey, Steve.
I'm glad I
Welcome to
made
the
it.
show. How are
Good
you?
to be here. It's been interesting to listen. I'm an amateur
Okay.
at quadcopters and FPV. Been flying RC for quite a long time.
Okay.
I built my first RC airplane in 1972.
Wow. Was that a
Sticks.
reed? Was that a reed controller or a craft? What was
I
that?
never got. I was in the Navy and I never got a control system for it. I built a J3 Cub,
Uh-huh.
paper and dope and balsa wood while I was actually in tech school.
Uh-huh.
Wound up launching at Freefly. We had some string flyers
Oh,
that we
that's
used
cool.
to fly with the old 049 motors that
Right.
just screamed until they died.
Right.
I put one of those on it, taped the rudder a little bit to the right, and let her go off a parking lot. Never saw it again.
I can relate. Are you? I had that happen a few times with RC myself.
Yeah.
I never did free flight. I did control line a bunch
Not
when I was a
never.
kid, and then started flying RC when I was 15. But so, what are you flying multi-rotors right now? Do you have something built in flying, or did you do like ready to fly?
I actually have about 9.
9.
I've built a couple flame wheel clones, Hobby King stuff.
Uh-huh.
I have one right now. I just built my most recent is a vector controlled quadcopter. I'm really liking it. I've never flown anything that felt quite so locked in.
The Vector, is that Immersion RC's Vector? Is that the 250 size, or it's like an expandable size?
Oh no, I'm talking about the autopilot, the Eagle Tree vector.
Oh, the Eagle Tree Vector. Okay. Oh, the Vortex.
I don't know.
The Vortex is Immersion RC's new frame.
Yeah, I've got the vector mounted in a 450 size flame wheel clone.
Mm-hmm.
It's really flying nice. Like NTM motors. I don't have much money in it, but it's a lot of fun to fly. I'm really interested in a lot of the thing. This registration, this FAA registration, and
Right.
I got a comment. One of the guys that you were just talking to, the fellow that was talking about the FPV racing, he mentioned being a member of AMA. Unfortunately, I had to stop going to the local club here, and I let my AMA membership drop because they wouldn't allow me to fly FPV there. They wouldn't let me fly anything that was out of line of sight. And I have a lot of farms here, and I
Right.
can fly. I have a lot of area to fly, and I do.
Right.
Fellow, I forgot his name, from Brooklyn,
Scott Norton.
made a comment about the insurance that comes with the AMA membership. And I just got to tell you, I got my own personal $1 million liability policy in extension to all of my other homeowners and car insurance that cost about $100 a year.
Right.
And it covers me everywhere. Now,
Mhm.
AMA insurance really only covers you if you're flying at an AMA sanctioned field or event.
Actually, I don't know if that's entirely true. I think the AMA insurance covers you at AMA sanctioned events and fields, but because of all the park flyer activity that we've seen with foamies and stuff, and now with multi-rotor helicopters, I'm almost positive it also covers you at flying sites that, I fly at the park by my house sometimes when I don't feel like driving to the field.
I'll just go as far. I haven't been a member for 4 or 5 years now, and
Yeah, it's not an uncommon sentiment, and the AMA understands that, and they try to address it by introducing different programs and stuff. You're definitely not alone, let's put it that way.
more comment on that, and then we'll get away from it. But there was an incident where a fellow flew his airplane into the window of a car at the flying field where I used to fly.
Right.
And he had AMA. He was an AMA member, and he called AMA, and they asked, "Oh, well, do you have homeowners insurance?" And he said, "Yeah." Well, you have to claim it there first.
Right.
They made him go after his homeowners insurance policy first before they would even come in, and they never did pay anything. His homeowners covered it.
Yeah, I think it's categorized as a supplementary insurance
Yeah.
where it'll cover you.
My umbrella policy is, and it's available everywhere.
Right.
I got mine with the little green lizard.
Oh yeah, Geico. All right. Well, thanks for calling, Steve. You have a helicopter you want to show us? You have one handy?
Actually,
You have 9 of them. I mean, there must be one within arm's reach, right?
hang on for just a second. I can go in the other room and grab one real
Sure,
quick. I'll
sure.
show you my new Vector.
Sure.
Hold on.
Do we have another call waiting after him? No, line's dry? Okay, so we'll wrap it up. That's fine. We're at, wow, we're almost at 2 hours. Drone Radio Live ended up being a better name than the International Drone Radio Hour. But thank you for everybody that's still watching. Thank you if you've picked this up via the archive on YouTube. At some point, we're going to strip the audio. We're going to be uploading it as a podcast so we could put you to sleep in your car. And with each week, we're going to be introducing, taking advantage of the technical capabilities that we have in the equipment here at the studio. You can see we're already putting graphics up on the screen. We're using the ability to feed an internet, web page stream, that sort of thing. So it's only going to get better. There we go. What do you have?
Vector. This is my Vector quad. My picture that I'm looking at is very tiny, but
Yeah, no, I see it.
I'm flying FR Sky receiver transmitter.
Mhm.
It's a Boscam 5.8 video transmitter.
Sure.
The FR Sky antennas, the receiver antennas, I got them up here. They kind of look like they're the circuit board type antennas.
Uh-huh.
And I got the alerter. If you're not familiar with the Vector, you wouldn't be. And the GPS, of course.
And that's a Turnigy frame?
This is a Hobby King frame.
Yeah, Hobby King.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right.
So that's like a flame wheel clone?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
And MTM, I'm looking for the numbers here. What do I got here?
While you're looking, I'm just going to plug a new thread we started today at Multirotor Forums. If anybody's watching this, we do group build threads where we do a build and we kind of do it slowly. We document everything. So if somebody wants to do something similar to what we're doing, they can follow along our steps, ask questions, maybe even use the same parts so that it makes it simple, it makes it easy to be successful. And what you've got right there is very similar to what we're going to be building for our 2016 group build. It's going to be a basic FPV quad, something that somebody like yourself could build, head out to the park, fly it around, put some goggles on, with the aid of a spotter, of course, per AMA guidelines, and have a shot at successfully flying FPV. It's the rage. I mean, people, AMA clubs everywhere are talking about this stuff. They haven't all signed off on letting people do it at their clubs, but people are definitely talking about it. So, but that's pretty cool. How long did it take you to build that?
Oh, probably. Honestly, I've had this frame put together for a few years. I really got hung up for about 18 months trying to fly APM 2.5 boards.
Ah.
I was buying them, and I built one myself. I'm a tech. I'm retired from the Navy. I tested aircraft
That's cool.
for 36 years. I was a flight test.
Thank you for your service.
And it was for the Navy. I only did six years of active duty.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Patuxent River Naval Air Test Center in Southern Maryland. I actually worked at the U.S. Navy Test Pilot School for a little while.
Are you like me? The less money you spend on an aircraft, the more you enjoy flying it because you're not as worried about wrecking it?
When I first got back in there, I said I built my first airplane in '72. I got away from RC. I didn't come back in until about 1983 or '84. There was a local club that formed here, and I got back into it, got interested in tower hobbies, and bought some of their little trainers, and it was fun. And I also have fixed wing FPV airplanes that I'm building. Bixler. I have a couple Bixlers that I'm working on.
That's cool.
I took my little foamy T-28 and put a pan camera on it. I'm having fun with this stuff. My problem down here is like I said, I live close to this Naval Air Test Center, and actually south of there, 20 miles, is the Now it's the Joint Services Drone Testing Center at Webster Field. We have Pioneers and all kinds of UAVs, government UAVs flying around, so I have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, doing the line of sight stuff, it's not hard to go out and find a place to fly. When you start getting into the beyond line of sight stuff, that's when, you know, the FAA starts to get nervous. People at the local airport start to get nervous. And eventually we'll have protocols for all this stuff that allows it to be done safely and reliably, hopefully by civilians. But
Common sense goes a long way with this.
you're not kidding.
I wish there was a way that we could find all these DJI quadcopters that are going to be sitting in treetops all over the country after Christmas this year, because I know there's going to be a whole bunch of them
Right.
fly away, you know, that flyaways all the time, and people just don't understand. They think anybody can fly these things, and you can't. There's definitely a learning curve here.
Did you ever hear of RTFM?
Yeah.
Yeah, that applies. Read the manual. Flight manual. There you go. Read the flight manual. Anyway, well, Steve, we're going to wrap it up. You have the official, can you hear me? You have the official distinction of being our first ever unscheduled live caller, Drone Radio Live.
I'm glad to hold that. I'm going to try to track your shows as closely as I can.
Cool.
And like I said, I'm retired, so I'm off that day.
We'll tell you, well, I'm an airline pilot. I'm off that day too. But tell your friends, spread the word. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get updates for new shows. We're going to start relying a little less on the mailing list at Multi-Rotor Forums and a little more on the subscriber list at YouTube. So subscribing at YouTube, we'll be doing 30-second or 60-second teasers that'll go out either the day before the show or the afternoon of the show, and that'll serve as the reminder that you know, we're baking up a new show, you know, that night at 9 o'clock or whatever. So
I've been subscribed since your first show.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're certainly trying to make a great show. We're certainly trying to make a great show. So it's not like, you know, we're just looking for empty subscribes. You know, we're trying to deliver. So.
Oh, I got to tell you another one.
Thank you very much.
This is my first ever Skype call. I've never done this before.
Well, there you go. So we're sharing something special. All right. Well, thank you very much for calling, Steve. We're going to wrap it up. This is our November 18th Drone Radio Live, episode number 3. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll announce the guests as that date gets a little bit closer. But for now, thank you very much to Steve. Thank you very much to all of our guests, to our sponsors. Multi-Rotor Mania, I forgot to mention. Brian, I'm sorry, but that's at the website. And all ERC joining us at multirotorforums.com as a new sponsor. And especially our guests, Jim Bowers, Steve Maller. You have to come back and keep updating your ALTA experience. Scott Norton, thank you very much for coming on and doing the FPV report. Thank you to Scott Hess for showing up and plugging his business, Flying Cross Aerial Productions. And I think that's it. Oh, Gene Robinson, thank you for standing in for Patrick Egan. And to Patrick Egan, thank you very much for setting the standard we're all going to live up to, being professionals in the drone industry and taking vacation. All right, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Good night.